welcome to the Sugar and Spikes podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs, side hustlers, and anyone ready to uplevel their career in their own damn way. I'm Des. I'm a life coach for women who get that having it all sometimes means having to balance the good and the bad, the sugar and the spikes, and all the in-between.
And I'm Tammy. I'm a therapist, and I'm all about helping as many people as possible to build awareness and make meaningful changes in their lives. I'm also dedicated to diversity and inclusion and increasing access to mental health care.
Between the two of us, we have 4 master's degrees and thousands of hours helping people develop balance, confidence, and clarity on their terms. So let's get started. All right, I'm officially recording.
Oh.
Because why not?
Okay.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sugar and Spikes podcast. I'm Des.
And I'm Tammy.
And today, without any riffraff, further ado, padding on the subject, there's something that I've actually been wanting to record about for a while, and I'm ready to just dive on in.
Let's do it.
It's this topic of degrees, like those shiny pieces of paper that hang on walls. And okay, so the backstory is, for all y'all that are on the interwebs with me, maybe recently you've noticed a lot of, like, not necessarily bad mouthing degrees, but like kind of the cheapening of degrees, and there's so many layers that I kind of want to unpack for this topic. And I guess we'll just kind of open with these posts and the sentiment of, like, you don't need a degree to be successful.
True.
Which is completely true. Like, that's fair.
I agree.
Yeah.
You don't 100% need one, right?
Mhm.
The world's not black and white. You can definitely achieve your goals and do what you need to do without a degree. Now, some things require a degree.
Yeah.
You want to be a psychologist?
You're going to need
You
a
need
degree.
a degree.
And the thing is like, I feel like there's a very fine line that's happening, in kind of the entrepreneur space, in the personal development space of, like, you don't need a degree, which is true and fair and all the things, and this loss of respect for the degrees. Because every time, maybe not every time, but very often when I see those posts of, like, I don't have a degree, and it's like, I said sayonara to the man, and I walked away from convention, and I did all these things, and why would I spend 4 or 5, 6 years in school, and blah, 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 blah. Like, just making it sound like school was the worst idea ever.
Well, maybe for them. I
Yeah.
think the problem becomes when you take your personal experience and you somehow generalize it
Yeah.
to, well, it's just awful.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like it. It's awful. It's awful for everybody. No respect. I don't have to respect that. You know,
Which is
that kind of attitude.
That's one of the things that I've seen is I've worked with so many people that had so many degrees and had no idea what they were talking about. And I'm just like, it's when I see those things, like, I have talked with so many therapists that had no idea what they were saying. I'm like, I mean, I kind of feel like it's hard to come out with a piece of paper at the end and be completely clueless. Like, maybe there wasn't a connection, but I guarantee you people were jumping through some fucking hoops.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about the hoops that, we've said this many times. Between us, we have 4 masters, and I'm about to get a doctorate soon. Fingers crossed. No, not fingers crossed. It's a definite thing that's going to happen. I just have to get to the end.
Yeah.
So, like, I have a lot of respect for degrees, and I don't think that that's the path for everybody.
Right.
Right? And I certainly don't think that I would say, well, people with degrees don't know what they're talking about. I don't think that that's a true statement either. I think it's not black and white, and it's somewhere more in the middle, in that gray space, or if you want to say in the purple space, right? Anywhere in the middle where 2 colors make a third color.
Yeah, and I think the thing is like, it's one thing that I hear a lot in terms of, like, the coaching community and in people that want to start off, like, either as health and fitness coaches or life coaches and all these things, and it's this really weird situation that I've seen where people are like, I want to be a life coach, and I don't have any experience, so I don't know what to do, and blah, 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 like all these things. And I'm like standing back here with my master's with like, I have thousands of hours of experience because I got a fucking degree. Like, I chose the path that would get me experience to stand on.
Right.
You know, so like, yes, you can go hang up your fucking like shingle and call yourself a life coach and, you know, do the thing. But if you're really like nervous and anxious about experience, figure out a way to get the experience. And maybe that doesn't have to be a master's. Like, it could be a certificate. It can be like, just find a way to get experience.
Yeah, find the way to get training.
Yeah.
Right. Like, the purpose of a degree, whatever degree you're going for, but the way that I kind of think about it is my degree gave me access to people who were professionals and who could train me effectively.
Yeah.
Right? And without that training, I wouldn't be a good therapist. And so for me, a degree is more than just a piece of paper. It represents training. It represents long hours of work. It represents investment of my time.
Yeah.
It represents sacrifice in other areas of my life, with the idea that I will then become really good at what I'm doing because I got the training that I got.
Yeah.
There's other ways to get training.
I think what it boils down to is finding some sort of system or something to point to where, like, if you're just starting out, to where you can feel confident and say, I've done this and I'm capable of moving forward.
Yeah, because if you think about the purpose of training, right, like somebody said this to me the other day, is like, if I only know my way, my perspective is really limited. I can definitely help people from my perspective, right? It doesn't mean I can't do that. And the number of people I'm going to be able to help are somewhat limited because my perspective and my experience only works in a certain number of cases, right? But with training and exposure to a large number of people in different settings and all that, you see lots of different people. And it opens up your thinking in terms of perspective and ways to approach things that you would never have thought of. Because one of the things I really liked about school and liked about getting my degree is that it opened me up to perspectives that I hadn't thought of. Now, and for me, that's really, really important. So I think you can help more people with that huge diversity of perspective, because then you can pull from that and be like, well, this way may not work for this person, or maybe they've tried this, but they haven't tried this.
Yeah.
But there's no way to know those other things without like exposure to it in some way, and without practicing in ways. And the thing that I thought was important about my training is that I was supervised. I knew I wasn't going to do harm to people, that I had somebody overseeing me who could say, you know, go this way, do this, or what do you think you should do, and help give me the supervision and the guidance that I needed to know that I was not doing harm.
Yeah. I think all of that's really, really good. And I think also in terms of, I feel like for any style of coaching, there's this kind of quiet mumble that occasionally people come out and say, but they act like it's this big secret. And I'm just going to like, go for it.
Do it.
And it's no longer going to be any sort of paid secret. But like, coaches talk about finding clients that are 6 months behind where they were. You know, and things like that. And that's why you spend so much time thinking about your ideal client, and your ideal client is actually just you 6 months ago and all this stuff. And that's bullshit.
Okay.
Because, like...
Surprise, everybody.
Yeah. Like, I have so many thoughts on this that I can't, like, pick which way to go for it.
Pick one. We'll just go with it.
Like, for one, it breeds homogeny.
Absolutely.
It's cheapening your experience. If you're a coach and you're like, my ideal client is me 6 months ago in that situation, then you're telling the rest of society, my experience is only good in this lane. Whereas, like, it could be broadened. But also, if you're a client working with a coach, then you're going to be under their shadow. Like, you're going to be receiving the like, going back to what you were saying of, like, breadth and depth of, like, experience and knowledge.
Yeah, you're
right?
only going to be able to go as far as they've gone, right?
Yeah. And and in terms of like experiences and coping methods, and just because like the thing is like what worked for them may not work for you, even though your personalities may be good. Like there's so much that goes into finding like a coach and a therapist and stuff like that, that is beyond like its personality. Like we've talked about fit before, right?
Oh, sure.
So
Fit's huge.
you found someone that fit, but if you're operating under this like idea of finding a coach that's been in your situation, then like came out of it, and that's it, that's their one thing that they can point to. If that one method doesn't work for you, you're going to be left feeling resentful. You're going to be left out of money. Like it's not going to be a great situation. Whereas if you were like find someone that has more of a breadth of experience and things, then you know it's just you have more of like
you have more things to pull from,
yeah.
right? And so it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, is like when you see lots of different people and you get exposure to lots of different people in different areas and different companies and different wherever you get. So I say settings, right?
Yeah.
So that opens up the coach or the therapist, whatever the person is, whatever professional you're working with, to say, I have more than just this one way, because I've seen more, I've done more, I have more things in my toolbox, right?
Exactly.
Because if you think about something like coping skills, for example, I always bring it back to a more therapist kind of focus because that's what I know.
Yeah.
But this applies in any case. So you go back to coping skills. So if I only know one coping skill and I'm trying to teach it to you and you're like, Tammy, this just isn't working. And I'm like, well, it worked for me. If I'm thinking this in my head, well, it works for me. It should work for her. And so I keep trying to teach it to you. And that's all I know is just the one thing, right? Well, you're not going to connect with that and it's not going to work for you. But if I say, hey, like, let's try these other ones, and you find one that's very different from something that works for me, but it works for you.
Yeah.
Well, then we've come to an understanding and we've been successful.
Right. And I feel like that's actually one way to really know if you're working with someone that truly knows what they're talking about versus someone that's just like taking stabs in the dark. Because if we're talking things like coping skills or strategy, even for like business coaching and stuff, if it's this is the one way to do it, this is the one way to do it, this is the only way to do it, then like what you'll hear a lot is, well, it's really just a block. Like if it's not working for you, then folks will be like, well, then it's a block. Maybe we need to work on your mindset. No, like that's someone covering their ass because they don't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, there have to be different strategies, right? Because there's different people. There's high energy people. There's more reserved people. There's people who are really detail oriented. There's people that are really big picture. And the way that they approach tackling problems, the way that they approach coping is going to be very different. Like even if you think about, there's people who like to use a lot of cognitive skills for coping. So like letting it go, for example, or recognizing what they can and can't control and letting go of that in terms of a cognitive skill. Yeah. Versus people who love doing coping. So they love breathing. They love going for walks. So even if you break it down that way, even if there's just two categories, there's still two. And there are people that are going to lean more towards the cognitive way and people that lean more towards the physical way. Yeah. And so if you only know physical ways and the person's a more cognitive coper, that sounds weird, but
it works.
Okay. Yeah. They're a coper. Then you're kind of going to be shit out of luck, right? They may get some effectiveness, but it's not going to be fully satisfactory or as effective as it could be.
So one other thing is in terms of like the things that you get from degree programs that you don't necessarily get in terms of life experience. And like, this is not to say, I feel like this is the asterisk we put in every episode. This is not to say it's the same thing for everybody. And I know we're going to get people that are like, well, I feel this and I embrace it. But like,
well, I think everybody has the right to their own point of view. We're just saying what ours is.
And the piece that I'm trying to get to is, grad school specifically. And that is one thing, like so many people that don't go to college and haven't had the college experience, there's not a lot of understanding around it's critical thinking and it's, broadening of horizons. It's not just answering tests. And then people that went to undergrad but didn't go to grad school don't have that experience of like what grad school put you through.
Yeah.
And like the real lessons you learn. Like, yeah, I can run a fucking T-test and I can talk about theory. And my brain was reformed.
Yeah.
Going through grad school. And one of the key things that came from that was the drive for continued education.
Yeah.
Which is one thing that I feel like we bring to the podcast a lot. And kind of shifting into the like topic B for the day.
Okay.
Is like always growing, always learning. And one thing that we've been playing around with lately in like our own lives and stuff, and I've talked about it, I've hinted about it a bit on social media, but is the idea of hypnotherapy.
Oh yeah. I love hypnotherapy.
And the thing is like that piece wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for a degree program and going to like a certification training and things like that. So there's one thing to say, well, I want to learn about this and read a little bit online. And there's another thing to go to a fucking like training for it, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing that really makes me think about is that if you had told me that, Tammy, you are going to love hypnotherapy.
If I would have told third year Tammy that she was going to be talking about hypnotherapy, she would have punched me in the face.
I know. I'd have been like, you don't know me at all. Oh my God. Our entire friendship has been a lie.
Done. We're done here.
You just don't expect it, right? And one thing that I really learned in grad school, because I think we've talked about this earlier on the podcast, but when we got our initial training placements, like Des got her first choice and I got number 12. And I was like, oh my goodness, 12th choice. Like they told us, they're like, most people get their first or their second, third choice.
Maybe fourth on a bad day.
The odd person. There's the odd person, like the outlier, who sometimes will get something like 10. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and just go with it.
Yeah.
So when I got mine, I was like, what? Like I got my 12th placement, but I really, really learned a lot and I grew a lot in that year.
I think it's important to note, I don't think folks know what that necessarily means. The placements that we were selecting were also our style of therapy that we wanted to learn under.
Yeah, for sure.
So
we had one, like I was like, oh, I'm super behavioral. I want to be on a behavioral team. And they're like, nope, you're going to be on a psychodynamic team. And I was like, what?
Which, I mean.
Like, that's a hard no for me.
I dare you to ask us our thoughts on psychodynamic, dear listener. Fucking dare you.
Well, I definitely had I have a lot of strong feelings about it. And
I will say I'm an Anna Freud fangirl. Try saying that 5 times fast. Ugh.
Well, so wait, what was I saying?
12th choice, grad school.
12th choice. But I decided to just be open to it because they weren't going to change it, for one thing. And the other thing, I was like, well, maybe I could really learn something. And that has happened to me multiple times throughout my grad school experience where I got a placement that I wasn't expecting, or I didn't get the choice that I wanted. I got another choice, and it's opened amazing doors for me. And I like to work in areas that I never thought were possible. And
which is something they tell you, right? Like when you go into grad school, they're like, just because you enter in thinking you're going to do this, chances are you won't.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what happened to me, right? I had a very one-track mind about how I thought about clients and what I wanted to do and my style of therapy and the clients I wanted to work with. And I can tell you, I don't work in that style of therapy. I use a different one. That I don't work with the client population I thought I was going to at all. Yeah. And I actually found a passion that I'm incredibly dedicated to that has nothing to do with what I originally went into grad school for. And that wouldn't have been possible if I had just gotten my first choice every time and been on this path, like narrow street, like right on down the alleyway, right? But instead I was kind of like, here's this field and you're going to have to navigate your way through it. And I was like, oh, but I didn't know this was over here. Like, this is incredible. And I've loved it. And I've grown a lot as a person and I've grown a lot as a clinician. And so that's just like I don't know what point I was originally making, but that's okay.
That's fine.
But I think being open to those experiences, which I didn't know I needed, wanted,
Yeah.
would have enjoyed. Oh, yeah. Hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
So that brings me back to hypnotherapy. I never really would have thought that I was a hypnotherapy type person. I like mindfulness, and hypnotherapy is like a very intense form of
It's mindfulness on crack.
Fair enough. So true.
I have no ethics board to report to.
So it's a very intense form of mindfulness, is how I would describe it.
Yeah. So wait,
Dex
pause.
would describe it that way.
So I was on Instagram, and I was doing a story late at night the other week, and I was talking about the hypnosis thing because I was like, I'm getting ready to like do my my guided meditation or whatever. Like I use those words interchangeably right now. And I was like, the thing is I've never really I never understood people getting high because I'm allergic to weed.
Okay.
But when I come out of like a really good guided meditation session, I would assume that that's what getting high feels like, where you're just like dazed and it's a little dreamy.
Yeah.
But then like everyone messaged me and was like, well, I forget like what it was, but like, well, how do you know that you can't get high or something? And to answer those questions,
isn't that kind of missing the point?
Yes, and to answer those goddamn questions, guys, I'm allergic. Like I have the weirdest allergies. Like someone was like, "Well, just fucking smoke," and I'm like, "I can't."
Yeah,
but
not a good situation.
But so like, it's super. It was a side note. Oh yeah, because it's fucking mindfulness on crack. That's what I associate it with. Drugs, all the drugs.
Well, however you describe it, the feelings can be intensely personal. But it is this way of getting. To me, it's very strengths based in the sense that it helps to access strengths inside of you that you may not know you have, and when our conscious mind is in control, we have a lot of defenses and other things that we have to get through, right? Things that have served us in the past and ways that we approach things. And what guided meditations, hypnotherapy, those kind of more intense mindfulness exercises do is they get around those to work with the subconscious to access those strengths that you have. And so you can really see some incredibly profound changes with it.
Yeah.
It's also really effective for clients who struggle with the more talk component of therapy because they're not required to say anything. And so it can take some pressure off in that way. I've had really good results with that. So I really like it. And you could not have sold me on it a couple of years ago, but I decided to go to the training because I've learned enough about myself now to be like,
to be open.
Absolutely, I will take that opportunity.
Yeah,
I'll try it out. And see what happens.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I am incredibly passionate about it. I love it. I think it's amazing, and I would encourage everyone to try it. You can download like guided meditations online.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And so so yeah, I'm just going to stop there.
So in terms of hypnosis and stuff, what would you say are like some key reasons someone may want to try it?
It's really good for anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good for you can use it for substance use, like reduction in use of substances. It's really good for that. You can use it in the processing and healing from trauma. So it's good for a number of things.
But not as a standalone, right?
No, so you use it. So with anxiety, I like to use, if you think of a guided meditation, you can use that to reduce anxiety to then go forward and do more talk-based kind of interventions and stuff. And you use it with other things for things like trauma.
Yeah.
So yes, you don't just use it by itself.
Like, you're not going to heal those deep trauma wounds by listening to some YouTube videos.
No. And the other thing I would say about it is I think there's a lot of myths out there about the way
you respond.
Hypnotherapy is practiced. And the way it was taught to me is to be, like, I think the idea we think of is, like, cluck like a chicken.
Right.
Right? That idea of commanding people to do things. But that's not the way I practice hypnotherapy. It's very much an invitation where the client is in control. And the client has all the power in terms of what they do or how deep they go or what they get out of it. And it's suggestive in nature. Like, if you would like, if it feels safe, do what's right for you. And so it's really focused on empowering the client, even though the clinician is the one that's talking. It's focused on letting the client make choices, even if they're not conscious choices, like to make choices about how it goes and what they get out of it.
And so one thing is like, if you didn't pick up on it already, I'm a huge fan. And one thing I found, and like, I haven't read all the research, and chances are I probably won't anytime soon, if I'm being honest. But my experience with it has been the days when the weeks when I include it like 2 or 3 times throughout the week, I'm so much more focused. Like, I intentionally pull up like scripts and stuff for, to stop procrastination, to like for clarity, things like that. Like, I very much use it in a business focused sense. And those are the weeks that I'm fucking on.
Nice.
And I was actually thinking about it because this week's been kind of a shit show. And I was thinking about it, I was like, I haven't done any of that like this week at all. So I think it's something to play around with, right? Like, it's one of those things that's just super accessible that you can try. If you don't like it, you can leave it.
Yeah, so you can go on YouTube. You can type in hypnotherapy. You can type in guided meditations. They're kind of similar, not exactly the same, but pretty similar. And just see what you like.
Yeah. So
try it out.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And we wouldn't have had that insight if it wasn't for degrees.
I like how you brought that full circle.
I try.
That's awesome.
I really try my hardest. No, like, I'm trying to think of like my final thought, but it's just like, don't overvalue something and don't undervalue it.
Yeah.
Like, give respect where it's fucking due. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I respect you, Des. You have my respect.
I feel like fucking Cartman, right? Like, respect my authority. Oh! Okay. Additional tangent. In terms of like authority and stuff, I have this really good story from this piercer from California. And if you guys didn't know, like, back in the day, I really, like, my goal in life was to be a body piercer.
Oh, I could totally see that.
I know,
that's
right?
Awesome.
And so I was, not necessarily good friends, but was entering into, like, this mentor-mentee role a little bit with a piercer for a minute. And, he was a member of a professional body of piercers, and had all of the pieces of paper on his wall. Even though, like, a lot of people are like, well, like, it's piercing, blah, blah, blah. But then it's safety issues, right? Like, that's why you do it. And that's why I would say, like, degrees and certificates are key, is because it helps with safety pieces. I don't care what industry you're in, you're dealing with some sort of safety.
Yeah.
Or legalities or ethics.
Sure.
And he was vehemently against them. He couldn't stand them and all of those things, and really hated what they stood for.
The pieces of paper?
The pieces of paper that he had hanging on his wall. And that's what I hear a lot of is like, well, education's just so fucked up right now and blah, 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 which, yes, and.
Yeah.
So I was like, if you hate them so much, why are those hanging on the wall? He was like, because it demands respect. Because it tells people to respect my goddamn authority.
Okay.
And I'm like, fair enough. Like, that's all we really want in life, right?
That's all you want in life.
Some little respect.
Some respect. Well, I would hope that it's at least a stepping stone towards respect. I know I take a little bit of a different view, but your view is totally valid, right?
Yeah.
For you, it's like, hey, I worked hard for this. This shows that I'm competent. Like, I have training. I know what I'm talking about. For me, I hope that it opens up a conversation to say, like, hey, I have this training and I can be of use to you in this way.
Yeah.
To establish that respect that I really want to earn from people.
Yeah.
And to say, like, yeah, I think I've gone far enough. I'll stop there.
I feel like it's the same thing, just different words.
Yeah, just, a little gentler, because I tend to be a little gentler. And so, like, I say it in my gentle way, and you say it in your
like
very assertive way, and that's all okay, because always are valid. And so, yeah.
That's what we got for this week. Thanks for listening, you guys.
Bye, friends.
Bye.
That wraps up this episode of the Sugar and Spikes podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'd also like to thank Forget the Whale for use of their song, Move Along, as our theme music. If you liked this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and let the whole world know how good this shit is by leaving a review. It would mean so, so, so much. Also, don't forget to get your free stress layer training by going to DesireeW.com and clicking on Slay Your Stress. You'll also find a link to that in the show notes below. Till next time, and remember to stay unavailable for fuckery.